we left off at just that it seemed like that he was excited that you understood him, that he wasn't,
and that because I did, he was like, okay, here, here's I got some stuff to show you, and I think really that's kind of.
Dude, you know what this reminds me of? The Sandlot. Do you remember The Sandlot?
I've only seen parts of The Sandlot whenever I was really young. I never watched it again. Yeah. It's one of those, like a classic that I just missed.
Oh man, The Sandlot was my whole childhood. I'm still living The Sandlot. That's everything. In The Sandlot, spoiler alert.
Go for it.
Is the whole movie's built around they lose a baseball signed by Babe Ruth, and they got to get the ball back. And it flies over the fence into this house where there's a really mean old man that's done a lot of really mean stuff to people. And he's an awful guy, and he has a dog that'll eat you alive. And at the end, the big dramatic conclusion is that the dog is nice, and the old man is just an old used to play baseball with Babe Ruth, and he's just a great guy. So it's like it reminds me of that. Like the devil's like it's that misunderstood kid on the playground or whatever. It's like anybody like that. When you're demonized, if somebody hugs you metaphorically, if somebody comes to you and embraces you, they can almost you become three-dimensional. Yeah. I think to call somebody evil, even the devil, as just pure evil, is two-dimensional. And so that's super interesting. Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard anybody in my whole life say, this is a very interesting new thought. That's cool.
It was for me too, The
idea that
but it made sense the second that all this happened, it was like, this makes sense to me. Like
what else is like that in the real world? Like what's a metaphor for that where it's bad but necessary? And so you don't judge it as bad.
Definitely.
Pain?
I think a lot of. Would you say pain or Bane from Batman?
No, pain. I meant pain, like
pain. Yeah, definitely. But more of an embodiment of it is like. I think a lot of people are a little bit naive about like what our central intelligence does or whatever, But that's a really great example where like at every step. They're doing many things. If you know about the drug running, if you know about the spying, if you know about killing people, if you know all the things that they're doing the darkest stuff, but they're also doing light stuff, whatever, But the reason that they're doing the darkness is because it's justified, at least in maybe in this hypothetical argument, it's justified because they have more awareness or more of the reasons that you don't. And so you might see them bomb a village or kill a person or whatever. And you go, wow, that is terrible.
Well, that's the idea of like kill 1,000 to save 1,000,000.
Kind of. Yeah.
Can I ask, can you think of, and just because I want to really like get this idea hammered, because is there anything that we can all relate to that we without even realizing it, embrace evil within ourselves and don't call it that because we see it as such a fundamental, necessary evil? Something more home?
That's a great question.
Real life. Am I ever truly evil in a way that is like that?
Well, it depends on
bad.
What you're thinking, okay, what do I do that is like this? But really it's, what do I do that people perceive to be like this? Because it's really just the perception of what you're which is getting to the kind of the whole argument, But I'm sure you've done many things in your life that at certain points maybe people felt betrayed or people felt, like you had wronged them in a certain way.
But you don't get the context for why I did that.
But maybe you, let's paint the argument. Maybe you do. Yeah, they don't get it. But for whatever reason, you're in a position where you're fortunate enough to understand what I'm doing now is going to help this person. Whatever this is, whatever our relationship, if it's a bad relationship, you see more, you're more aware of things outside of their awareness.
Okay,
so you see why this is justified.
I think that's why I said pain. The word pain, like experiencing pain in life, you realize as you get older that literal physical or emotional pain, just straight pain, it hurts. It can be very, very good for you. To the point where it's like you can't get better without it. But it only hurts. It only sucks. You know, truth can be that way.
And maybe this is the embodiment that you're talking about. Maybe pain is the best example.
Just for my own understanding.
And this is also it's interesting the way you describe it, because this is kind of the way I saw this thing. And this is what that Rolling Stones song kind of lays out. Is he's, maybe you could find the lyrics, but he said, like I was with the general, or I was a general in the ranks when you find the lyrics. It's much better. But what the song is talking about, and what the devil in this song is explaining, is that he's been at all these pivotal points of change. He saw that it was time for a change.
Okay.
And nobody likes change. Everyone wants...
What part? I want to figure out what part you're talking about. I shouted out who killed the Kennedys when after all it was you and me.
That's more of a reference to the shadow inside yourself, I think. But
I rode a tank, held a general's tank with the blitzkrieg raged and the bodies stank.
Yeah.
Is it that? Mm-hmm. You're saying he was there for that?
What they're laying out in this song is that every time humanity's been at a pivotal point where things have become stale, we're never going to want them to change. We're always looking back saying, oh, how good was that? If only it could still be this way.
Yeah. And
we're failing to acknowledge, because change can be uncomfortable, we give it this negative connotation. We think it's bad, all these things. And this is also, there's a phrase, the devil of change,
That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Pain. Suffering.
Right.
Because it's the pain of change.
It's without this thing, there's no progress. Everything just stays the same.
How do you categorize? Let's keep super simple and super like surface. How do you categorize what we all call just the Holocaust even? How do you categorize that in not bad or good, but part of change?
That's a good challenge.
Well, because I want to fit in that framework, because that's what we're dealing with when we think of the devil. Mm-hmm. When he wants to be hugged and understood, we have to hug that.
Yeah. Well,
and understand its context.
Right. And you're kind of walking on ice with this subject specifically, but
I know that it's offensive. Let's just pick.
But what my point is that, although there was such a mass number of casualties in that, I mean the number of casualties and the type of horrific event, there's been much more horrific. Oh yeah, for sure. Many times throughout history or 100%. Whatever. And so with it in that kind of context, maybe you're able to see a little bit more easily about how these things change the world. And
were they necessary is kind of the point. That's kind of the question.
Right. And
here's what I think. I think that I'm just going off pure intuition of that. Yeah. And no, you would never, ever, ever want tragedy or sometimes pain is too unbearable. It's just how it is. There's levels. If you lose a kid, if your kid got abducted and then dies or whatever, then how do you categorize that pain? How do you because that's what it is. That's why it sucks so much, is because it hurts so much. So then to categorize it as part of some greater process, that's that thing. That's the hard thing about being a human being, is it's really hard to let your mind go there.
Yeah.
It's really hard for people to obey that logic. But I'm with you. I think that might be the truth.
And again, this is all your perspective on life. If you're looking at life in the way that kind of we're all kind of interconnected, and in a way we're all kind of eternal or whatever, then the lessons that you experience in your life and that teach you the most, and probably your worst pain probably came at a time when you needed the pain to be that strong for you to make the correction that you needed in your life. If the pain weren't strong enough, you wouldn't make the correction. Yeah. Because we become stubborn. And so if you're extrapolating and you're seeing all of humanity as going through
right.
the same growth and life cycle that you do in your own little microcosm, then one of these massive events of death and horror are what changes the one humanity, like the whole thing,
right?
Because it's so strong,
right?
And I just
so
think
that's like the death of a child in a family,
extrapolated
to the world.
Point to the
that was the death
to humanity.
Humanity's kid died.
Metaphorically. Yeah, well, and if you look at it religiously, like also specifically, Jews being the children of God or
an
whatever.
Important
I mean,
group.
it's actually a perfect analogy that you made.
Isn't that weird?
Maybe.
Well, and the other thing is, I would like to be able to have a concept that is communicatable to be able to help myself and other people wrap your head around the pain of innocent loss.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that people have a tough time categorizing.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of, because even when you're talking about like, you need to encounter pain to encounter your growth needs, that makes sense when you're an adult.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when a lot of and I just like it. It's just the ultimate trump card to this conversation is, well, what about a kid?
Yeah, right.
Why does a kid need pain? What do they do? What do they got to learn?
Mm-hmm.
And it's valid. I don't have an answer to that. And honestly, a lot of the systems of thinking that I'm really into are trumped by that question.
I think it's,
and I don't know.
I think it's kind of hard to think about in this way, but this is like a fact of death that a lot of people don't want to realize. Is the thing that I said, like, death really is the best teacher. It's the strongest teacher. It has the most kind of firepower. And so it's the most likely to make you have some change in your life. And most people can relate to this. When someone they know close to them has died, it was either so strong what they were feeling that they tried to shut it out, or they let it happen to them and their life changed. I can think my older brother died, and this happened to me, where I began to analyze everything I was doing in my life. It was also at a time where I was the deepest into having convinced myself of what like a successful life is based on like what I had seen in my friends' parents and other things like that, which was not me, you know?
Right.
And so
High school?
No, this was during college.
Okay.
And so I really, it hit really hard on that thing. It made me question everything, and I think people hate to look at somebody else's death as something that could make your life better.
So that's what I was going to ask is okay. I mean, I think I love it from your perspective because you can talk personally about it. So here's a tragedy that in theory, I don't know the context, but it had to have been relatively undeserved because it's a young death.
Sure. Yeah.
So, or entirely undeserved, but let's just say it's entirely undeserved because that's kind of the point. It's like a 5-year-old or something.
Yeah, for the argument, yeah.
Yeah. Then is it to be contextualized that it was a necessary evil? That's literally the question.
Well, I'll tell you that just like you can look back on things. Like I can look back now and see where I was at that point that the thing happened. And I can see where I was in life and what direction I was going. I was about to start applying to graduate schools. I was like really committing myself to this thing that wasn't me, and had that not happened, I almost definitely would not be here right now. I almost definitely would. I mean, I'm positive I wouldn't have, traveled the country and had all these experiences. I wouldn't have the relationship I have with my fiance. I wouldn't be this person. And, I'm so glad that I'm this person, that it happened the way it did. And if I'm being honest, it's absolutely that was a turning point. That the death that death made me analyze everything I was doing and change it.
Are you okay with conceiving it that his death helped you?
100%, and that's what I'm getting at. Is that
and that
I would be in a much.
But wouldn't you rather him be alive?
I would rather him be alive. But there's this undeniable quality to his death that in some way, maybe unknowingly, I'm sure unknowingly, his death contributed to my life becoming much greater.
And then I wonder, then within that context, could you, in theory, because I think that almost everybody relates to this, that if you look back on life and the tragedies, give it enough time, you wouldn't change it. Everybody.
You'll see how the path weaved and turned in a way that got you to the point you're at now, that you're very...
So then I wonder, and it could be entirely conceivable that everybody who's ever died can see the subsequent, unfolding and say, I don't want to take that back. Even the person who died would not want to live again if they could see the unfolding.
Yeah, let me phrase this, what I think you're saying. If I were in my brother's position, and
he can see you now,
and I knew that if I died, that would cause this change in his life, for him to go on a path that would change him fundamentally, kind of restore him to who he really is, and put him on a path where he can help other people do the same thing, I would die. So that, I think maybe a lot of people might not feel the same way, but because I've seen the effect it had on me, I couldn't take that away.
Here's what I think about the whole devil thing too, is that nobody would ever go into it saying, yeah, let's do that. But once tragedy happens, most people can relate to that. You wouldn't take it back after enough time has gone by. There's just something about it. You would never go into it saying you want it, but then when it did happen, it's done. But then you wouldn't go back and do it. So there's that's a paradox. Why is that? But that is something. So most people would never want to imagine a world where they have to die so that somebody that they love can live a better life. I love my wife. I would hate for me to have to die so that she can be happy. I would hate that.
Yeah.
But if I did, and then she was, I wouldn't take it back.
Yeah.
So then that could be a weird way to contextualize even a 5-year-old's death.
Yeah. You can form the argument in a way that would fit that too. And that's just based on the way that kind of generally everyone kind of views and experiences life and death, because of all these things that I've seen and experienced and felt in my own life. I see what I believe happens when you die. All of that has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And in a way where everything's a lot less finite, and so I'm not maybe affected in the same way.
Yeah.
I know we're going pretty late. If you want to hear the rest of that story, I can lay it out and we can be done, and just so you can hear it.
Do you want to just do it now?
Yeah, that's
we're like 2 hours and 20.
Okay.
Do you want to do it now? I'm down.
Sure. It'll only take 10 or 15 minutes.
There's no way.
We can save it for next. It's up to you.
I'm down. Let's go for it.
Okay.
I want to hear it. So you're walking.
So I'm walking with this giant blue man.
In a mesa, like Mars-like.
Very Mars-like.
Yeah.
We're having conversations about all of these things that you and I have just kind of discussed.
That shit?
And yeah, that shit.
And it was communicated intuitively more.
I definitely remember it being very conversational, in this way. But I don't remember the specifics of the words either of us said.
Yeah.
But the feelings were strong enough and stuck with me enough that they still resonate with me, and I now feel this way that I've kind of just explained. So I'm walking with him for a while, having this conversation. And then I feel something else coming. In the same way, but not in the same entrance, like not that terrifying, none of that. This thing just kind of appears. It's another human type of thing. Same height, maybe like 11, 12 feet tall, huge, really big.
Yeah.
Standing right next to me. This thing is dressed in white robes, has sandals on, has very red skin, and his face appears to be like that of a late 60s year old Native American man, wrinkled face, distinctly Native American, dark, reddish skin. He has big red gauges in his ears with feathers on. I mean, very obviously Native American.
Yeah. White robe.
White robes that for some reason are like kind of Japanese feeling to me. And so are the sandals. I don't know.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so he appears, and I see that his face is this way I described, but at the same time, which is very weird, in the position of his head is a translucent, almost like if you've seen Star Wars and they talk to the holograms of people like phoning in or whatever, that same kind of like you could reach through it, is a bird, like the head of like a falcon or something, right where his normal head is. And they're both in the same place at the same time, but one is translucent enough that I can see the other. Okay. He feels, like I said, the other one feels very much like in charge of what he's doing, this one feels more of like a messenger in some way.
An angel.
Like the right hand, very high up, almost at the same level as this other guy. But this dude has an opposite kind of thing going on, and he is like, feels like the right hand man, if you will, of whatever that other job is, whatever that thing. I say jobs. That's kind of the best way I understand them. We
made a sketch, if I can interject, a while back, called "The Devil's Advocate." About the concept was that the devil has an organization. He's got to get his ideas out in the world, and so does Jesus. And it's all about idea power. And that's these two businesses. Anyways, everybody has jobs. And the devil's advocate is a job, and he's the devil's right-hand man, and his job is to go out in the world and take the undefendable.
Like, well, just hear me out,
And he's always defending the undefendable, and being the devil's advocate in real life with the devil's perspective.
Sure, yeah.
And so we made a whole sketch about that. But in the sketch, there's the devil, Lou, Lucifer is his name, Lou, and everybody, there's jobs. There's like, we have a character named Rape. We have a character named Gluttony.
Of course.
Evil things.
Yeah.
And they have jobs to do. This guy's got to get rape done.
This is one way of archetype. I mean,
it was a sketch,
right?
Thing.
But in a way, I mean, if I think that, like, just like we said, you start cheesy, get to logical.
Yeah.
Like that is like it. I think kind of does work that way somehow metaphysically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the beginning way of thinking about it. Jobs. Yeah.
I think there's nothing weird about that.
Right.
Purpose.
Exactly.
You have a purpose.
And that's very much what this feels like going on during my experience,
You're still in the Mesa.
And so I'm still there. And now I'm holding hands with both of them walking down this path. And we're kind of having conversation back and forth about the same type of things.
Does this guy have a different vibe?
Definitely different.
What's his vibe?
The devil's vibe was very much like, I don't want to say aggressive, confident,
American,
proud, definitely proud, but very realistic and like American. This other dude's vibe is very much, very humble. Even though he's like a big deal, like definitely a really big deal, but very humble, more low key. And to kind of embody this, we get to a point where we stop walking, and I'm kind of talking to this bird. I just call him the bird guy. I'm talking to this bird guy more, and this devil guy is like kind of off next to me. He's like stretching, like it's like he's warming up for something. And which is like kind of
great.
Characterizes them. And that thing I told you is really interesting because a friend of mine saw something similar during a mushroom trip. The same blue person, the same height, stretching, which is unbelievable. When I heard that, I freaked out.
No way. Of course.
The same thing, except that guy didn't have horns.
I've heard a lot about, like in DMT, there's like the purple lady.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are
people see these
figures
same
that'll
things,
come.
and I'll tell you what to type in to see this guy that I'm talking about.
No
Because
shit, he's there,
the
right?
day after it happened, I saw a meme. It was a funny meme, but the second I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, like that is the dude. That's him.
That's
you know?
crazy. I want to type it in now.
Type in Mr. Manhattan.
I can pull this up.
Yeah, do it. He's a character from The Watchmen, which I was never, I never was really into that. But the second
I remember this guy.
Yeah, and I saw like the cinematic representation of him, and it's not the same. Like whatever it is about that image in the cartoon or the comic was very spot on, and he's sitting in the same place. Like it's look at the one where he's just standing and there's like a red planet.
Oh, I'm going to make it bigger for everybody. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's all these images of him like contemplating humanity, sitting on, saying that he's ready to be done with humanity. All these things.
Shit, that's crazy.
I freaked out when I saw this. Like, this was crazy to me to see this.
Wow.
And I'll have you look up something else too that is also.
I mean, this is a perfect description of what you saw.
Exactly what I saw. Yeah.
Based on what you were saying.
How crazy! But it's specifically those comic representations of him are
these
really,
ones.
Yeah, are really the one of him sitting. This is what really really stuck out to me. Yeah. And it looks so. I mean, the color's different in some of the images, but I mean, it looks so similar to what I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, almost identical. I really thought that was insane.
That is insane, dude.
And what is this character? This character is Mr. Manhattan. That's supposed to be a reference to the Manhattan Project about nuclear energy, which is like the height of power, like the height of ego, the height of like survival, which is what I kind of understood this guy to be. Is like, this is like the yin and the yang. Like you can remove yourself from life and become at ease and abandon parts of your ego, or at least put it to rest in some circumstances, so you can think more compassionately and all these things.
Yeah.
But then there is the ego, and to me, he was like, he's fit, like he's warming up, he's ready, like he's always ready, like he almost embodies like the ego and survival, and like in the purest form. Right. Is how I experienced it.
And yet he represented evil to you when you before you hugged him.
Before I understood it. Yeah. And the evil is my understanding of evil was like incorrect.
That's what I'm saying.
By correcting
when you walked in,
it was revealed to me
that it's this guy.
Yeah.
And that's so fascinating because like there's a lot of conclusion we can draw about that now.
Well, and there's even more. And so I'm talking with the bird guy, and I realize that for whatever reason, I realize intuitively, like I say thank you to the blue devil guy.
For like stretching and shit.
Yeah, literally. And I said, like, whatever's going on now, I really appreciate you again. I'm gonna reiterate, I understand you, I appreciate you, but I'm not meant to learn from you right now. I'm meant to learn from this other guy. Okay. And so he was just like, as like matter of fact. Oh, right before I said that, I had been asking over and over again for these guys to give me like information that I could communicate to other people, that I could explain, that I like, that would make sense, that wouldn't be unreasonable or so out there, Yeah. And then also that I wanted to know, like, what is my job? If I'm receiving these things, why? What am I supposed to do with this? Yeah. And I remember
both of them?
And I'm asking both of them. Many times explicitly in the same way.
What am I supposed to do with?
I kept saying, what is my job? Like, I see your jobs. Like, what is mine? Why is this happening? And I felt like I kind of wasn't getting anywhere. And I then said that I tried to like barter with them. I said, like, if you don't want, I will never say a word of this to anyone. If that's how it's supposed to be, if that's what's required of me to learn.
If you're supposed to know what you're supposed to do and never tell anybody how you figured it out.
I'm just saying, I'll do whatever you guys want. Mm-hmm. If you guys want to show me the most amazing stuff and have me for some reason never speak a word of it, I will. But just let me know what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And saying that, they both kind of like laughed or responded in this way that was like, like that's not even... Like, you tell people, like,
right,
and that's why I'm talking about it.
Yeah, but it's also like, it does sound like that's such a That's such how we would approach God.
Yeah. I know.
Like,
and then they
what
just
are the answers? And they're like, dude, there's not answers.
Well, and not even that. Just like, I'll do something. I'll do it if you tell me. This bartering thing. And they were like, dude, what?
Like, get the fuck out of here,
like that's
dude.
not even what it's about. Like, which was hilarious. And the devil dude laughed especially. Like he got a kick out of it. And but after that, I
said goodbye to.
I said goodbye to him. He was cool with it and just walked away. And this is when, like, the amazing thing happened to me. And I'll preface this by saying, like, I can only remember parts of this, and I knew while it was happening to me that I wouldn't remember. I knew it. Like, and because of that, I just kept saying, like, I know, I feel this thing happening. I know I'm going to forget it. Please, if it's meant to be, like, please let whatever this is, a piece of this, stay with me so I can rediscover it or understand it when I'm meant to. And what happened was that devil guy left. I was standing with the bird guy for like a minute before he was kind of like, all right, let's get to it. Kind of. I was sitting there meditating. At this point, I've been meditating for like 20 minutes, like, and I'm barely breathing, like when I'm meditating like that, like so relaxed. I mean, my heart rate must be like 36 or something beats per minute. Like I'm really, really shallow breaths, barely moving a muscle. And so it was notable to me that as soon as he left, my mouth just like popped open, like, like open wide. And it almost like distracted me from the meditation. And I was like, that's weird. I closed my mouth. In real life, I closed my mouth. And I'm trying to get back into it with this bird guy. And then again, my mouth pops open. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? So I close my mouth. And I'm trying to get back into it. And then my mouth pops open. Or then I realize, wait a second. Like, maybe, I don't know, this is weird how my mouth is popping open. I'll just let it go. So my mouth pops open. At this second, the bird guy bends down to me. And he has in his hand, like he's holding something this way, like pinching it in front of, bending down because he's so tall in front of me, and pinching something between his fingers that he's going to put into my mouth. And the thing, if you look up a picture of an Egyptian ankh, it's in almost like a cross shape with a loop on the top. And I can see in his hand that even though it's this shape, it's the texture of like a wafer or like a cookie. Or like a Nilla wafer almost, but maybe not so solid. Yeah, it's in this shape. Maybe the more thin edible one. It's like a cookie shaped that way, or like a cracker or something. I let my mouth open, and he puts it in my mouth. And the second he puts it in my mouth, I talked about before having that meditation where I heard something, super real. And at this point, this has gone past that. Like I'm used to it at this point. Yeah. But the second that thing enters my mouth, this almost completely ended the whole thing because I was kind of freaked out. I felt the weight of it on my tongue in real life, like sitting on my couch. I could feel something in my mouth, like real. Whoa. And it was shocking at first, but I understood, like I understand what's happening. I know what the next step is to swallow this thing, Yeah. But I'm just letting it sit on my tongue because I'm amazed that I can feel its weight, like kind of heavy, like big in my mouth, Yeah. And I close my mouth, and as I begin to swallow, he kind of stands up and then takes a seat. And I think for a minute, I go like, okay, here we go. And I begin to swallow it, and as it goes down the back of my throat, it becomes a fish. Like I can feel that it's a fish. It's no longer a cookie. It's like a thin, long fish that just slides down my throat. The second I allow it, it just slides down easily. The second this happens, I go from, I've been laying there for 20 minutes, barely moving. Instantly, my heart rate has gone from 36 beats per minute to like 200. Like, whoa. Like I've never in my, like I've done sports my whole life. I've really pushed it athletically with things like, I know what it is for my heart to be like beating to like, okay, we got to stop, Yeah. It's beyond that. And it's beyond that in 0 to 100, like instantly. It happened the second I swallowed it. My heart rate skyrockets. I can hear it in my ears above those beats that have kind of like synced into the whole experience by this point.
Right.
My whole body is shaking every time, And so I've experienced a little bit of this heart racing thing before. And so I know, like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to just breathe really deeply through just like that. So now I'm sitting on my couch, breathing super deeply in and out of my nose, slowly too. It's doing nothing. My heart is beating out of my chest. And while this is happening, this is where I knew I was going to forget what was happening in that moment. I remember the heart beating. I remember all of that. I remember seeing like colors, like just tons of colors, like shooting at me.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the same way that if you've seen Harry Potter, they have the Dementors from the prison Azkaban or whatever to come and try to suck out your soul.
Yeah.
And they're like, they kind of come past him and you see like his face being like pulled in certain directions. It wasn't a scary thing like that, like negative, but that's what was happening. Like I'm sitting there and my heart's racing, I'm breathing, I'm seeing all these colors. I feel, even though I had to keep checking that I was still on the couch, like almost trying to get out of the meditation. But at that point I'm like locked in.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to feel that I'm still on the couch, but it feels like I'm like floating or like in the air or something like that. And I'm being pulled, like my part of me is being pulled in all these directions, like, and it's changing and kind of jolting around, and super, super intense. And now it's been like a minute that this is happening, and I'm starting to actually get like for real kind of scared, like, am I going to die or something?
Right.
Like I've never
it's a
known
hallucinogenic a little like,
I'm like, whatever people say tripping is, like, I've been tripping and I'm sober. This is nothing,
Yeah. Are your eyes closed?
My eyes are closed the whole time.
And you're letting yourself stay in it.
Yeah.
You're trying to stop your heart from beating?
Before I could have stopped it at any moment. But at this moment, it's like, it's taken over. Like,
wow.
With this thing, after I ate that thing. And I knew that, accepting it. Like, I knew that something like that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I'm starting to get a little afraid because it's definitely been over a minute. And my heart has been beating as hard as it's ever beaten before for that whole time. And it's not stopping.
Yeah, and you're sort of being thrashed around in a color pond.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of describing it. And I'm then it's starting to come to an end, and I'm realizing for sure, like, I'm already forgetting it. This is already going away. And that I'm trying to fight to get it back now that I know that I'm going to be okay. And it's gone. And I kind of come out of that thing, which was like a trip within a trip, because I come out of it and realize again that I'm sitting here with this bird guy and he seems pleased. And I just said it again. Like, I understand I don't know what this is. And maybe I'm not supposed to right now, but please, like, if you can let this stick with me so that maybe I can understand it and hopefully put it into words for somebody else to try to relate to someday, please,
Yeah.
And I felt like that was validated in some way, maybe. And then, it was all kind of over, and I was just sitting on my couch and I felt still really relaxed. No more visuals. Everything was over. No more bird guy. Everything was done. And I instantly kind of came out of it, and my heart was slowing down, and I just wrote everything down so I wouldn't forget.
Okay, got you.
And that's kind of where it ended.
So that was like that's like a dream when you wake up from a dream and you're like, God, I want to remember that, and I know I'm gonna forget it. And like 10 minutes later, you're like, yep, forgot all of it.
Yeah, but I remembered a lot of it.
Yeah.
And
well, what are your conclusions? I mean, what do you think about the bird guy? What do you think about that experience?
Well, so I think about it all the time. But if you could do one thing real quick and Google Osiris and Horus and see if you get any hieroglyphs of them together. I'd seen these two together for a long time, but I'd never. If you could Google, Osiris, Horus, King Tut's tomb. A lot of these depictions are of these gods. But they're on the outside of walls of these palaces and stuff. So the paint has worn off over time. They're not painted. But this was one of the first times I saw them painted. And let's see if we can. It's not. I'll have to send you a picture on my phone. I found one on Instagram one time. If you scroll down, you might see something. But you could just type in Osiris blue. But so Osiris is an old god who has died, and Horus is his son. And after Osiris has died, he turns blue, and he and Horus are always kind of together. Osiris shoes.
This is hilarious. D3s.
Maybe Osiris Egyptian blue.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Look at those D3s.
But so after this, I started to kind of see the blue devil or this blue god idea kind of over and over again. You see he's depicted as blue there.
Right
he's
here.
Depicted as bluish green in some of these.
Yeah.
If you scroll down, I mean, you might see more, but yeah, and then also in this hieroglyph that I'm talking about that's in King Tut's tomb where the paint is preserved, you see kind of a procession of different gods standing next to each other, and at the front of the procession is Osiris, and then there's Horus. And all the kind of gods are like this yellowish skin color, but then Osiris is notably blue, and Horus has red skin.
No shit.
And that was crazy to me.
No shit.
And so
that's
weird.
Crazy.
And eventually I found out. So we'll have to maybe talk about it another time. But the Birdman was a huge thing in Native American mythology. Was represented as a bird, had red skin like a Native American.
So that made me think of Rick and Morty.
Listen, this
the bird creature.
They know some of this stuff.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
And especially because like there's the four ages of man, or the 4 ages of life over this like 29,000 year period is supposed to be the bird, the man, the lion, which that weird cat is in this episode with Birdman and Bird Person and Rick.
Right.
And the other one's not there. The Taurus isn't. There's no bull involved in this. But those are the 4 ages of man: is man, bird, bull, lion. And in this is a wedding ceremony. This episode between Bird Person and like a human, like a god. And he describes himself as like a god, and that he and Rick have been around for a long time.
Right.
And also this little messed up cat dude is involved too.
Yeah.
But it's definitely
Squanchy. That's right.
Yeah. But it goes along with the mythology, which is interesting.
Well, they're interesting. Dan Harmon's super. He's kind of I don't know a lot about. If you're a story writer,
sure,
like that's its own skill, and that guy Dan Harmon is a story genius.
Yeah.
When you hear him talk about story, he was one of the first people that I started him. Duncan Trussell was actually one of the first guys.
I passed Duncan Trussell in traffic yesterday.
No way.
Yeah.
That's trippy. He's one of the first guys that I ever heard introduce the concept, in a way that I was actually listening, that a lot of the Bible is myth and metaphor in a way that is more true than the actual story.
Yeah.
A lot of people would call it myth and metaphor in the past to discredit it. To say that this is all bullshit, none of this happened, and he was the first one to be like, it might be true, it might not, but it's actually more true what it's communicating. It's
storytelling at its finest, because when you're beginning this journey, like we've said before, you have to start with these cheesy concepts, and this is
overarching shit.
This is the portal for a regular person, is by reading this book and these stories. Maybe you can understand that these stories mean much more than what their face value is, and that it really is that cheesy, in air quotes, introduction to understanding how to logically quantify what's going on.
Yeah. He also what that made me. Oh, and then Dan Harmon I heard on a podcast breaking down story structure, and it's like. But I can't remember everything he was saying. It was blowing my mind. It was just the first time I ever heard somebody talk about story in this way. And I want to go back and listen to it now because it blew my mind. But now I forget everything he said.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But I mean, it had something to do with like archetypal structures and meaning and layering and all these other things. Like which Rick and Morty, man, like. I wasn't into it when it first came out.
Yeah, same.
And then I watched it and I was like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it just got me because I saw like these guys clearly they're into their own things.
Yeah,
and they're like really good at writing about it. You know,
Yeah.
like they're really good writers, and that's what I acknowledged and why I started watching it.
Yeah.
And then I started to learn about a little bit about symbology and mythology and stuff, symbolism, and started to you recognize it everywhere.
I mean, it feels like an increase of intelligence to be able to categorize your entire human experience into these overarching repeated structures, story structures, and then if like you're able to go through life actively knowing that you're in these phases, then all of life takes on weird these broad concepts and you're able to relate to other people in an interesting way because you start to, I don't know, everything becomes less about these individual little things and more.
Everything has more symbolic meaning instilled in it.
Yeah,
like everything you
and your life
experience.
has this arc too. You know, it's not just what happened today or what happened tomorrow. It's like you're in a rhythm. And you're in this stage of the rhythm. Yeah. You're in this high or low or whatever. And I mean, I'm not there yet. I can't actively walk through life thinking like that. I still think that what happens matters in and of itself. Yeah. But the reality is that
it's always both.
I know. Yeah. Fuck, man. You're really good at that, dude.
It takes training. That's what you said. I just had to keep drilling it into myself, you know?
It's just hard. And you know, I give you credit because it's hard to learn something without actually, you know what? I think that, and maybe a lot of people relate to this, I think I have a tough time learning without going too far to the extreme.
I do too. Yeah.
So having that balance to be able to be present while you're interested, because that's part of what I find fascinating is to go all the way in and get interested, and then, but if you're present enough to be able to be like, and it's also not this. Yeah. I feel like I got to work on that because it almost cuts the fun out of the thing you're digging into.
It can, but then I feel like you learn how to balance it, and then you can go hard on both things. You know, the goal. Like it's always you always go, well, if I start doing this, then maybe it won't be the same, or I'll figure whatever. You know, but the goal is like my ideal is that I can think about all the things and I can control what I think about them. By thinking
and how you feel about them.
Thinking one new thing, it's not going to ruin the thing I'm already thinking. It's only going to augment it if I can control it. You know,
that's really good. That's actually really that's incredible. That's a meta thought. Yeah, that's like one of those thoughts I want to. Now I'm thinking like I want to install that thought as a meta, as this overarching umbrella thought under which all analysis exists. That's really cool. You're able to do that. I got to get into that.
Let's leave it there. Thank you. Thank you for staying late.
That was fun. Dude, I'm hanging, dude. This is great.